So when I was asked, why did you publish the cartoons, there was an implication there's a right answer and a wrong answer. And you'd better be bloody reasonable and convincing, because if you get the wrong answer, fines and perhaps even imprisonment. I should tell you, the very first person charged with this offense in 1977 was a Canadian-born Nazi. I just said, so go to tangent for a minute. His name was John Ross Taylor. He was born in 1910. A Canadian-born Nazi? That's weird. He was interned in the Second World War. Wasn't this Japanese and Germans? This guy who wanted to lead the Fourth Reich, or Third Reich here in Canada, they put him in jail. Anyways, after victory in Europe, they let him out. And by then he was, almost middle-aged. And in the 60s, he would go around Toronto. You know how he would spread the word? He would mimeograph, or gestatten, or whatever the word is, these fascist pamphlets and go up to the top of office towers and drop them down on the street like confetti, thinking that the men down below, probably half of whom were war vets themselves, would pick it up and say, yes, the time has come for Canada to be a fascist state. Literally, he's a kook. I mean, he's just one step away from wearing a hard hat all the time. Oh, like Ernst Zung. I mean, anyway, but in 1977, John Ross Taylor saw the future. It was the telephone answering machine. And yes, he knew it. He was 67 by now. He didn't have a lot of luck making Canada a Nazi territory yet, but the answering machine would do it for him. He got the telephone answering machine and he left a racist, anti-Semitic message on it. And he went around town handing out little cards. Psst, do you want to hear something anti-Semitic? Call this number. Are you going to even take a card from a guy like that? Are you seriously going to call that number? Well, some Jew did, I don't know, 20 or 30 times. And complained to the Human Rights Commission. And this law, he was the first person charged. And he was charged in 1977. By the time it went all the way up to the Supreme Court in 1990, John Ross Taylor was 80 years old. He's an 80-year-old kook who's in court for 13 years because he won't unplug his goddamn answering machine. And he was found guilty of likely exposing persons to hatred and contempt. He still wouldn't unplug the thing. And so in contempt of court, he served 9 months of hard time. I put it to you that the average Canadian rapist does not serve 9 months in custody. So boy, we got our priorities straight, don't you? Some kook. I don't know if anyone here goes to Toronto, Yonge and Dundas. It's kook central. Everyone's handing out things. Many of them are not even in English. Are you going to call every one of those and be offended and run to the government and tie someone up for 13 years? Likely to expose a person to hatred or contempt. You know, that law was actually written by the Jews. The Cohen Committee, Maxwell Cohen, a Jew in Montreal. There's a committee formed by Trudeau, I think it was. It was before Trudeau's time here. And it became law in 77. And for the first decade or so, it was the Jews who were using this law to prosecute their political enemies. Almost all the people were lowlifes, neo-Nazis. Not one of them did anything harmful. Not one of them threatened the peace. Not one of them committed an act of vandalism or mischief or trespass. If they did, they'd be hit with the criminal code pretty hard. But what do you do to some fool who just won't turn on that damn telephone answering machine? You create a new law called likely to expose a person to hatred or contempt, because that's the only way you're going to get them. And so the Jews got their John Ross Taylors, and the Jews got their Ernst Zundels, and a few other nobodies. And the Jews were feeling pretty good about themselves. I mean, forget the growing Islamic terror threat. Actually, that wouldn't present itself for some time. But maybe it felt good for the Jews to finally hold that stick in their hand. Huh? The Jews who themselves were censored for 2 millennia, who had our Torah burned. Maybe it was good to finally hold the stick and beat a Nazi senseless. 9 months in jail. That must have felt good for someone. You know what, though? The thing about the law, it's a Latin phrase, stare decisis. It means let stand the precedent. That's the golden rule of being a lawyer, is you follow what's done before. And the Jews, those stupid people, so smart individually but collectively idiots, lay down layers of sediment. The lawyers call precedent, case after case after case. Oh, for God's sakes, they went to the Supreme Court. And the Jews made the law. It's against the law to hurt feelings. Well, that was 1977, and in 1990, Not a lot of Muslims in Canada in 1990. Fast forward to 2009, there's about 3 times as many Muslims in Canada now as there are Jews. And you know what? Saeed Sohrawardi, that little bastard from Pakistan, and Mohammed al-Masri, that bigot from Egypt, did they write the laws that they used to hassle me for 900 days? In Maclean's magazine, they actually had a show trial in Vancouver for 5 days. It cost Maclean's $250,000. Did al-Masri make that law? Did Sohrawardi destroy our Constitution and erode 800 years of rule of law and hundreds of years of freedom of speech? They didn't. Can I actually blame those bigots for using the law to punish their political opponents? Well, I could, but I'd be a bit of a hypocrite. Because what's good for the geese is good for the gander. If it's kosher, then it's halal, isn't it? And why the hell should Jews be able to persecute some damn fool like John Ross Taylor and the Muslims not be able to go after their enemies? Seriously, what's the difference? What's the difference? There is no difference. And this illiberal law that the Jews have paternity over has been used to attack Jews, to attack Zionists like Maclean's. And it's on the march. And shame on the Jews for standing by it. I'm looking at my BlackBerry just to look at the time. It's 8:40. I'm going to stop there because I want to take questions. I propose to take, I got to leave here in about an hour. So why don't we take questions for half the time, and then let's sign books for half the time, and why don't we do it that way? Does that sound good?